Stolen Education, a documentary by Rudy Luna and Enrique Aleman Jr. This documentary is about 8 students testifying in a federal desegregation court case in Driscoll, Texas during 1956. As Mexican Americans, they were placed in 3 years of first grade: beginners, low first, and high first. This caused the Mexican American students to graduate high school at 20 to 21 years old. The all-white school board, administration, and faculty did this to discriminate them by their race, not because they couldn't speak English. Enrique Aleman travels all over South Texas, interviewing and questioning teachers, former students, and children of the board members. He asks about their experiences, what they saw and heard. Aleman also questions current faculty and staff at Driscoll to see if they knew their past of their own school.
So, Stolen Education. Honestly, from the beginning to the end, just the idea that someone my age, at this point, how old I am, or a little more or less, but graduates high school. That, to me, just seems absurd. And I don't know why they thought that was a good idea to have someone who's 3 years older than regular high school graduates, be trapped in this loop of first grade. And honestly, it's saddening, because those people probably had a good chance of learning the same things that, people like me should have gotten at. They should have been able to learn in a regular classroom environment and not be stuck in not first second, but bottom, like the low, the high, and then first, or low first, high first, and then just first. The 3 levels that they've discussed. And it just doesn't make sense why they would do that to me, because you should judge a person based on their ability, not because they can't speak English. Because just because someone can't speak English doesn't mean they're not intelligent. And that just seems wrong from my personal point of view. So to me that was a very big impact point on the unfairness of that whole situation. And it really kind of brought to light, like the fact that it all happened in Texas itself was just eye-opening, to say the least. So
I guess as a Hispanic student myself, I guess it's scary to think that I could have, depending like when I was born or where, that I could have maybe have gone through this. And it's sad to think that students like me had to go through this. I liked Dr. Cantu, how they got her to share her experiences, and it's cool to see how she's working in the education field now, making sure that won't happen again, making sure every student is getting equal opportunities to learn. I know in class we talk a lot about racism, oppression. Obviously this is a form of oppression and racism. I think that's a big reason why I want to become a teacher, make sure that no students feel like how these students felt, and everyone can get learning opportunities, and feel good about coming to school and actually want to come and learn. I'm glad they made this documentary. Definitely opened my eyes.
In the documentary, we are shown many examples of how Mexican Americans were treated horribly for just being in their culture. One example that shocked me was that the teachers would use a ruler to hit their students' hands if they spoke Spanish in class or even on school property. They were being punished for something that is in their culture. The school board was trying to make the students fit into American society instead of accepting their differences.
After watching the film, I can honestly say I'm very proud and very happy to see how far Mexicans will go through to fight for equality. The film demonstrated how corrupt a system could be based on the fact that one race is different than the others. It was shameful to see that those Driscoll students were never tested based on their academic abilities, but yet presumed to be slower because they didn't speak English. You know what frustrated me the most was the lack of resources that those Mexican school students had. They basically had to work with what they got. You know, when other schools needed funds, they would take away the funds from the Mexican schools. You know, going based on, by law, every school should have been treated or as seen as equal. But that school district knew the ways that they were going to screw over those kids. It was hard to see those interviews because you can see the negative effects that it had on their personal life. One interview that stood out to me was the interview with Ray Trevino. You could see from his eyes the pain and the suffering that he went through just because he was seen different at school. They all mentioned something in common regarding to their children. They mentioned that I don't want them to go through what I went through. As a parent, I can relate because I don't want my children to go through what they went through, and I don't want my children to go through what I went through. I was treated very differently because I was Hispanic and very, very poor. They thought that I was stupid and slow because I didn't have the money. So they would hardly ever spend time with me.
Education, to me, really hit home in a way because Driscoll is a place that I pass by every time from San Antonio when I go back. Me think, like, if this happened in Driscoll, what happened in my hometown? Because they're only about 2 hours away. I really felt a connection with a lot of the interviewed when they talked about how their kids don't speak Spanish because they didn't allow them because they were scared that if their kids spoke Spanish, what if they got held back in school? Like, they didn't want the same things to happen to them. And for me, I can relate to that. And it really makes me sad because my grandparents only speak Spanish. My mom speaks really good Spanish and English. I can only speak English. I understand Spanish, but I can't speak it. And it kind of, I feel like, has made a language barrier between me and my grandparents because I'm not able to have a full-on conversation with them. And I feel like a lot of people that went students of Driscoll, the Mexican American students in Driscoll went through, are probably in the same situation where they can't speak to their grandkids maybe because they never learned Spanish. And it definitely makes a language cultural barrier because then I kind of feel like I'm of Mexican American descent, but I don't speak Spanish, and people look at me and they expect me to speak Spanish, and I feel like I let people down, and I feel like I'm not being like my culture. I'm not able to show my culture through my language, and I wish that I could. I also feel like stolen education, it really took out a lot of good points on race and gender and social class in Driscoll. I love that it was able to get both sides of the court case in a way. They interviewed Mexican Americans that went through it and the 7 of the 8 students. It also interviewed some Anglo people and got their perspective and what they thought of was As future teachers, we need to learn how to accept our students for who they are and how to include them. We should teach our students to be accepting of others' beliefs and cultures. Ferguson mentions that we should not just accept our students, but also include them. We should be encouraging their differences and showing the class about other parts of the world, not just America.